Well, hello, welcome again to our reading of the Greek New Testament, and we're reading Luke's Gospel up to chapter 7. This is an interesting little pericope here, the healing of the centurion's servant. It's in Matthew's Gospel and John with slight variations. In Matthew's Gospel, what's described here as a doulos is described there as a pais, which may have a whole range of meanings. In John, he's actually the son of the centurion. The centurion's not a centurion anymore, he's just an official, he's a basiliskos. Luke contains somewhat more detail, especially about this particular centurion, than we get in the other Gospels as well. We'll mention that when we come to it. So it begins, Epede eplerosen panta taremata auto esto akoas tu lau, es elthan es Capernaum. And when all his words, when he had filled up all his words, when he'd completed all of his words, his rhemata, literally into the akoas tu lau, into the ears of the people. Akoa has a range of meanings, akoa or akoe, with an eta. It can mean a report. It's got that meaning in classical and Koine Greek. It can mean the act of hearing, and it can also mean the ear, the thing with which you hear. So probably could be in their hearing or in the ears of the people. Es elthen, he went into Capernaum. Hekaton taku de tinos doulos, kakos ekon amelen telutan. Well, again in Matthew, he's also a hekaton takos, or hekaton takes, the first declension. This is a Greek version of the centurion. Now, in some other writers, Mark generally calls a centurion by the simply Latin, puts the Latin name into Greek. Luke and I think Matthew also put it into Greek. They don't use the Latin term centurion. They call him a hekatontarch, a ruler of 100. So a doulos, Luke calls him a doulos here, a slave. Others call him a son. Others call him a pais, which is ambiguous. So the slave of a certain centurion, ekon kakos, being ill, amelen telutan, he was about to die. Now, interestingly, in Matthew's Gospel, he is an epileptic. So slightly different there. Amelen from mellow, it's got a slightly irregular imperfect, it's got a funny eta comes in there, even though there's no epsilon or anything in the indicative present tense, but this is from mellow. In classical Greek it normally takes a future infinitive, but not in biblical Greek generally. So being ill, he was about to die. Hos en auto entimos, who was precious auto to him. So this doulos here, this slave, was precious to him, to the centurion. Acusas de peritu Iesu a pestilen prosauton presbyterus ton iodion eroton auton hopos elthon diasoseton doulon autou. And having heard regarding Jesus, they sent to him, he sent to him, the he must refer back to the centurion, the elders of the Jewish leaders, eroton, this is the participle from erotao, asking him, hopos, well, it's this used place of hina, asking him, well, we would say that in English, but it's literally in order that. So asking him that, having come, he might save the associate ton doulon autou, his slave, his servant. Hoi de paragenomenoi proston Iesun parakalun. And they, being present to Jesus, so these are the elders, so they having come to Jesus, parakalun, they were encouraging or beseeching out on him, spudios, eagerly, saying, and then we get hoti recitative, so inverted commas, axios esti ho parexe tuto, agapa ga ho ethnos hemon kai ten synagogain autos oikodome sen humin. Now this is a very interesting little section because this is not in any of the other Gospels. And it's interesting too that Jesus rarely, if ever, heals any non-Jews. That rarely ever happens. And even in the case when, I think it's a Samaritan woman or a non-Jewish woman, he initially refuses to, and then when she expresses her faith, he changes his mind. But most of the time Jesus never heals non-Jews, which is an interesting fact. Here, it's as though Luke is explaining the reason why he's making an exception here. Because they say, he is worthy, he, hoi, to whom, parexe, this is second person, you might provide this. This is from par echo, and this is going to be a future form here, and I think it's second person, that you might provide this. So he is worthy that you should do this. An explanatory gar, for he loves our race, our nation, and he himself built for us the synagogue. Very interesting. Hodiesus eporueto sun autois. And Jesus began to go with them. Ade de autu umakran apekontos apotes oikias epempsin philus ho hekatontakes legon auto. And genitive absolute, and when he was being distant, this is the use of ap echo, it's being used in almost impersonally, but here it's used with autu. So when he was a distance not far, and the ade is something like at that time, or so then, or when he was not too far off from the house, epempsin, though the subject is the centurion, he sent friends, saying to him, that is to Jesus, Kyrie, vocative, O Lord, me skulu. This is the middle imperative from, the verb is skulo. Here it means to trouble, to bother, to harass. In classical Greek it's much stronger actually, it means to whip or to flay somebody. I think we get our word squill, which is an old name for a whip from this same root. So do not bother him. Uga hikonos ami. Well, literally, I am not sufficient, so I am not good enough. It's a funny use of hikonos here. Luke uses hikonos in a variety of ways. Here it's something like, I am not good enough. And then we get this funny use of hina, that you might come under my stegain, under my roof. Dio, this is from dia plus ho, on account of which fact I do not deem myself worthy. So I did not deem myself worthy, it's aorist, to come prosse to you. Alla epilogo, but speak with a word, kai iatheto hopaismu. Now it's interesting, we've gone from doulos here, it suddenly becomes pais in this verse. Pais can mean a servant, has a range of meanings, can mean a boy, son, servant, a male lover, can mean any of these things. And my son, and let my servant, we must perhaps say here, be healed. This is an aorist passive imperative. Kai ga ego anthropos eimi, for I am a man, tassomenos, subject under authority. This is the passive from tasso, to arrange or appoint, and hence this is passive, so being appointed, so being subject under authority. Ekon hup emauton stratiotas, having soldiers under myself, that is under my authority. Kai lego tutoi, and I say to this one, porutheti, go, and kai poruetoni, goes. Kai aloi urku, kai urkatai, and to another, come, and he comes. Kai to dulumoi, and to my servant, poieson tuto, do this, kai poie, and he does it. Akusas de tauta Jesus ethalma sinauton, kai straphes toi akoluthunti auto okloapen, lega humin udi ent to Israel tos auton pistin huron. And Jesus, having heard these things, he wondered at him. Perhaps he was amazed at him. Thalmasdo normally doesn't take an object, but here it does. It's got the auton, so we might say wondered at him, or was amazed at him. Kai straphes, and having turned, aorist passive participle from strepho, having turned to the crowd who were following him, apen, he said, lego humin, I say to you, neither in Israel have I found, aorist from heurisco, tos auten pistin, such faith. Kai hupus strepsantes est ton oikon hoi pemphthentes huron tondulon hugi einonta. And having returned from hupus strepho into the house, those having been sent, aorist passive participle, Huron, they found the slave hugi einonta, from hugi eino. This is the accusative participle agreeing with doulon. So they found the servant, the doulos, they found him. Hugi einonta means healthy, in a healthy state. Attached to that, this pericope is another one. This one doesn't occur in any of the other Gospels, and is part of the so-called Lucan material that is unique to Luke alone. And it probably again fits in with one of these healing stories, and it's just come in here because, well, it doesn't appear anywhere else. Kai ageneto ento hexes, and you see there's variant readings there with this. Poruthe es polin kaluminon nain, kai sun poruon to auto hoimthai tai autu. And it came to pass. Now this is a funny phrase here. You have to supply something like chrono. The hexes here is probably adverbial. There are variant readings here. There's te instead of to, hexes here, which may mean the following day. Hexes just means the following. It's an adverb here, so it's either at some following time, at some later time, or if it's te here, it might mean on the following day. But as what's written here, it must be chrono. And it came to pass some time later that he was going into the city which is called Nain, and his disciples were coming with the son here with him. And also, so his disciples were coming with him, and also oklos polus, and also a large crowd. Hos de einkizen te pule tes polios kai idu ex ekomizdeto tethnekos monogenes huios te matriautu kai aute en kera. Kai oklos tes polios hikanos ein sun aute. And when he drew near, this is from engisdo, engus is to be near, the verb is engisdo, when he drew near to the gate of the city, and behold, this is very, again, you can do it in Greek, but it is quite Old Testament, it is quite Septuagint, quite Semitic. The monogenes huios, the only begotten, the only born son, for his mother, so his mother's only, so dative of the possessor here, so his mother's only born son, ex ekomizdato, middle, so passive I should say, he was being carried out, he was being brought out, tethnakos, dead. Now you know that the verb to die is apothenesko, which is a compound, and you only get thenesko in Greek in poetry. You don't get it in the New Testament as a separate form, except when you form the perfect. And so this is used as the perfect for apothethnakos, but they don't have the apo. They're using the bare root verb thenesko to form the perfect participle here. So having died. And she was a carer, a widow. And there was, now this use of hikanos again, he uses it in the sense of enough, but it's enough in the sense of enough and more besides, so and hence it means large or many or great. So a great crowd of the city was with her. Kai idon auten hokurios es plank nisthe ep aute kai epen aute me klae. And having seen her, the Lord was moved to pity. It's that verb splank nisdamai, literally to be moved in your inner parts. So moved to pity, became emotional. Ep aute, towards her, or in regard to her, and he said to her, Me klae, do not weep. Kai proselthein, and having come beside, he hepsatov, from haptamai, he touched tes soru. Now this is soros. It's again one of these second declension feminine nouns. You can see by the article. It really means it's the bier, it's the thing that the coffin is carried on, and sometimes can be used just to refer to the coffin, but technically it was the thing that the coffin was carried on, but you could just say coffin here, and it's feminine second declension noun. So having come there, he touched the bier, or touched the coffin, and those who were carrying it from Bastazdo, estesan, they stood, i.e. they stood still. Kai epen, and he said, Neaniske. Now this is an vocative from neaniskos, simply meaning young man. Soi lego, I say to you, egertheti erist, passive imperative, arise. Kai anakathisen honekros, kai exatolalain, kai edoken auton te matriatu. And the corpse, anakathisen, from anakathisdo, he sat up. Kai exatot, from archemai, he began to speak. And he, that is Jesus, gave auton him, that is the boy, to his mother. Eleben de phobos pantas kai edoxas don ton theon legontes hoti prophetes megas egerthe en heimin kai hoti epeskepsatot hotheos ton laon autu. Again, very Old Testament vocabulary here. And fear took hold of all of them, and they glorified God, saying, and then hoti for inverted commas, a great prophet has been caused to rise, we might just say has risen, in Hamon, among us. This N can often mean among so among us, and again inverted commas, God episkepsito from episkeptomai, which is again an Old Testament word to make a visitation upon his people. You get the word bishop, of course. The episkopos comes from this same root, from episkeptomai. So God has made a visitation of his people, and kai exalthen hologos hutos en hole te iudaia periautu kai passe te perikoru. And this word went out in the whole of Judea regarding him. So this story perhaps went out about him into the whole of Judea and all the surrounding land, the perikoros. And that is the end of that little section of chapter 7.